Joe Biden, the Democrat, now projected as the U.S. president, the new president of the United States. That's based on projections by CNN in the last while. Now, Biden will turn 78 next month, at the end of the month, in fact. He will become the oldest president of the United States when he's inaugurated. This is in January. This then brings to an end a bitter, if you will, election run between himself and Donald Trump. But it's not quite over yet because, as I was telling you at the top of the hour, Donald Trump, the current U.S. president, had taken to Twitter again saying that he's won this election by a lot. Trump has maintained since vote counting began on Wednesday that this election was being stolen from him. His biggest bone of contention is to do with mail-in ballots. Now, those mail-in ballots, you'll recall, had been controversial for Trump and his Republican supporters because that was said to be the means by which most Democrats in the United States would vote. Let's get you more on this breaking news story. Bring in our U.S. correspondent, Simon Marks, who's joining us from Washington, I believe. So, Simon, this election being called in favor of Joe Biden, he should be U.S. president by January, we're hearing tonight.
Yep, January the 20th, 2021 at high noon, Joe Biden will now be sworn in as the President of the United States. It is over. He is officially President-elect of the United States. The race being called by all the major news organizations here: the Associated Press, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, a clean sweep, none of them disputing that once those fresh ballots were tabulated and the results published in Pennsylvania, they took Joe Biden's edge in Pennsylvania to over 30,000 votes ahead of President Donald Trump. And at that point, the news agencies, the broadcast networks here that crunch these numbers and have done so very carefully and very cautiously over the last 4 days since Tuesday night, election night here in the United States, they concluded that Joe Biden's lead is now unassailable. There is no path to victory for President Donald Trump, and therefore they called the election and now declared Joe Biden to be the President-elect of the United States. It is a massive moment for this country, ending days of tension, days of uncertainty as to what was going to take place, and it came as President Donald Trump was on the golf course. He's still on the golf course. He travelled there within the last 90 minutes, around 1 hour ago, as I think he was still in the car on the way to play golf. He tweeted in all block capitals, "I won this election by a lot." Well, he didn't win this election. He lost it. And now he's going to have to decide what to do. Is he going to continue making entirely unsubstantiated claims that Joe Biden has stolen this victory, that this is all corrupt, the fix is in, that this is all due to thousands of ballots being cast illegally, nefarious activities that he claims have taken place in sorting centres all over the country? He has provided no evidence to support any of those claims and allegations, and if he fails to do so over the next few days, I think we'll all have to assume that there is no possible legal action here that is going to reverse any of this. And, I mean, I can't tell you, you can hear, cheers on the streets here as this news was announced. The sense among Democrats, particularly, remember, Washington, D.C., a Democrat stronghold, is absolutely that a pressure gauge has been released here, and that the message will be going very, very clearly, Tembakili, to President Donald Trump that this is all over. And really, his only option at this point is either gracefully to concede or to continue being a curmudgeonly presence in the White House who perhaps simply never accepts that he lost this election. Well,
interesting that you speak about the president conceding, Simon, because even based on his tweets in this very hour, it was very clear that he does not believe that there's any possibility that he's lost. He did tweet, "I've won by a lot," but you also wonder that as Donald Trump was tweeting that, did he know that this would be the news that breaks this hour as voting was concluding in that crucial state of Pennsylvania?
Well, I mean, I think it was always pretty apparent that it was going to come today. I mean, we didn't know the precise timing of it. Certainly, many of us, many reporters, raised eyebrows when the White House decided on what is a glorious day here in Washington, D.C. You can see behind me. It's a beautiful fall day here. When he decided to head to the golf course. I mean, it seemed like it was a slightly curious decision, but that's where he finds himself. His lawyers were supposed to be giving a press conference around about now in Philadelphia to outline the claims that they say they plan to advance in courts across the country, that this election has been rigged and has been fixed. But I'm afraid for them, absolutely no one is paying any attention whatsoever to what they have to say in Philadelphia, because just as that press conference was about to get underway, we got those new results in from Pennsylvania, and the networks called the race. And I think it's very important to underscore that the moment the networks here call the race and the moment the Associated Press says, as it has put in a bulletin to all of its media subscribers, Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States, that's game over. There's no circumstance under which anything now happens where we suddenly get more vote counts in and everybody goes, maybe we called it too soon. It's over. Donald Trump cannot, in these vote tabulations, overtake Joe Biden, given Joe Biden's unassailable position in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, and in Nevada. I mean, the only state where Donald Trump may still claw victory out is in Arizona, and even that doesn't look like it's likely. So this is a huge moment for Joe Biden. And Temperkili, we must also say this is a massive moment for Senator Kamala Harris. She becomes the first female vice president-elect of the United States, and she will become the first person of colour to be a heartbeat away from the American presidency. And that's an enormous moment for her, with every possibility that over time she becomes the first female president of the United States, given that Joe Biden in January of 2021 will be 78 years of age, the oldest president ever to move into the White House for a first term. We don't know if he plans to seek a second term at the age of 82. That is obviously a question for the future, but he's going to have Senator Kamala Harris by his side as Vice President of the United States once that inauguration is done and dusted, and they've both taken their respective oaths of office at midday on January the 20th, 2021, right here in Washington, D.C.
I want to stay with the historic touch point, Simon, because a third element to that is that Donald Trump, in fact, becomes the first U.S. president in over 25 years to be booted out of the White House after just one term.
Absolutely. You're so right to raise that, Temperkili. That in and of itself is a massive moment. The first president since George H.W. Bush was denied a second term by voters in 1992. In his case, the economy just turned turtle on his watch, and he couldn't persuade Americans that he was the man to be the hand on the tiller of a country that was facing an economic crisis. Before that, you'd have to go back to Jimmy Carter, of course, who only served one term in office before being beaten at the polls by Ronald Reagan. And look, one-term presidents, admirable though many of them have been in many regards, including Lyndon Baines Johnson, who never served a full second term in the White House after deciding not to seek re-election. One-term presidents are often considered failures. The majority of presidents in the modern era have enjoyed 2 terms in the White House. Donald Trump has been denied that tonight. We know he said himself on Tuesday during a visit to Republican National Committee headquarters in Washington, where he was thanking campaign staff, he said, "Winning is easy, losing is hard." He said, "I've always found defeat very hard." And I thought at the time that that was almost a unique moment of self-reflection by the President of the United States. He was responding to a question as to whether he had written two speeches, one victory, one defeat, and whether he had them in his pocket and he was ready to pull one out on election night. And he said no, he hadn't written the speeches, but he then went on to say winning's easy, but losing is very difficult. I've never done well with defeat. And Lord knows we have seen that played out dramatically here over the last 96 hours, where even now there is a question as to whether later in the day here President Trump is going to address the nation perhaps in time-honoured fashion and find the words necessary gracefully to bow out. He's been relentless over the last 96 hours in insisting that he won't do that and in insisting that he actually won this election. Joe Biden, you know, said something very important last night in the speech that he made to supporters. He said that he wanted to see American politics put back on a much more productive path. Just going to find my notes over here because I've got them from last night. He said politics isn't about total unrelenting warfare, which of course is precisely the kind of manner of politics that President Trump has specialised in over the last 4 years. But then he went on to say that it was very important for Americans to understand that in politics, my opponent is not necessarily my enemy. He tweeted out a very similar message on his Twitter account a few hours ago. He said 12 hours ago, we may be opponents, but we are not enemies. We are Americans. That is not a coincidental phrase. When Senator Bob Dole lost a presidential election to Bill Clinton, he conceded in a speech in which he said to Republican supporters, I want to remind everybody in this room, and I've said it throughout the election of Bill Clinton, he's my opponent, he's not my enemy. And so for Joe Biden to be reaching back into history and pulling that phrase out and using it in 2020, not just because it was a phrase articulated by a real old orthodox conservative traditional Republican, Bob Dole, a war hero, a man deeply admired, now 97 years of age here in the United States. Not only because it was articulated by Bob Dole, a much more traditional Republican than Donald Trump, but because it was articulated in one of the more graceful concession speeches that any Republican has ever made, losing a race for the presidency. We have not heard a similar speech from Donald Trump. I don't know if we're going to.
Simon Marks, stand by for us. We're coming back to you in just a few minutes. Simon Marks helping us break down the breaking news out of the United States. Tonight, Joe Biden has won the presidential election.